Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another JINSA update on the ongoing war in Israel and Gaza, now in its seventh week. I'm Blaise Misztal, JINSA's Vice President for Policy, and I'm honored to be joined by two of our Israeli experts, IDF Major General Yaakov Amidror, JINSA Distinguished Fellow and former National Security Advisor, and IDF Major General Amikam Norkin, former commander of the Israeli Air Force and also a JINSA Distinguished Fellow. Generals, thank you both for being with us. As always, you can find the latest analysis and updates that JINSA has been producing throughout this conflict at jinsa.org. But for right now, I wanted to start by turning to General Amidror and asking him, we're now about a week into an operational pause with daily exchanges of hostages for prisoners. Can you give us the latest in terms of how the pause is progressing? Is it likely to be extended, and where does Israel go from here?
Yeah, we are waiting now for the release of another 8 women and children. 2 women had been released at the beginning of the evening in Israel, and we're waiting to the release of another 8. That will make the quota of today of 10 Israelis released, and the meaning of it is extension of the ceasefire till tomorrow morning. Till the morning, we suppose if the Hamas wants to extend the ceasefire for another day, they have to provide another list of 10 women and men. They try to convince that they don't have enough for another group of 10. We are insisting that that was the agreement, that should be what they will have to provide. I don't know what will be the decision if they say that they have 8 women and 2 men. I don't know. But it means that it is towards the end of the ceasefire. The end will be tomorrow 7 o'clock, or it will be Saturday 7 o'clock? I don't know. But it is in the next 48 hours that will be the end of the present agreement. There are more than rumors that the Qataris, the Americans, and the Egyptians are working on another deal, which will include not only the women and the children, and of course the prices will be different than 3 for 1, as it was in the present deal. I don't know what will be the reaction in Israel. The mood is to not to continue with the endless negotiations, but if we don't get something real on the table, to resume the war and to negotiate when both sides are fighting in the Gaza Strip. The decision here is quite clear: to resume the ground operation, and even to extend it. More than rumors about another effort which will take part in the south part of the Gaza Strip, and it is clear that this is a place to which we have to go, because the part of the leadership and maybe and for sure part of the infrastructure is there. The Americans want that it will be not the same way that we did it in the north, to be more careful about civilians, so on and so forth. I don't see technically any way to do it the way that the Americans are recommended to do. It's not that that we don't want to do it, it's impossible to do it. And I don't see any American expert who can give us the advice how to do it. It's something which there is no any way to distinguish between civilians and Hamas terrorists. Every Hamas terrorist, when he dropped down his Kalashnikov, is a civilian, and vice versa. Part of the hostages had been hosted by civilians in their houses and their homes. So where it's begin and when it's end, there is no any and you saw the number of civilians who came as the second wave in the raid in the 7th of October, and they were as barbarian as the Hamas terrorists. So I don't see the way, the fine line between the two. And if it's impossible technically, it's probably impossible militarily, and the results will be the same. If there is an address to reduce the number of civilians which would be killed, it's Hamas. If Hamas let his people to go to the safe haven in the Muasi, the designated area which was the people in Gaza were told to go to, less people will be killed, and if Hamas does not fight behind the human shields, less people will be killed, and so on and so forth. The address for all these demands is Hamas. It's not the IDF, and we will conduct the war the same way that we did in the past, very carefully to do it, not to kill too many civilians when there is no need, when Hamas is not fighting us. But at the same time, we are very determined to dismantle Hamas military capabilities, whatever will be the price. And we intend to do it in the north and in the south and in the middle, by the way. So this is the situation on the ground. In the north, it's very quiet. But my assessment is that Hezbollah will enter to the same level of skirmishes around the border when the fire will be open in Gaza. He has obligations, and Nasrallah cannot allow himself to be called coward who is not taking part in the war, and he wants to show that he is part of it, but at the same time to be sure that he is not deteriorating the situation to a big war in which he will have to see the same situation of Gaza in South Beirut. It's his nightmare, not his privilege. So this is the situation. In the West Bank, we continue to arrest members of Hamas and other organizations. From the beginning of the war, we arrested more than 2,000 people. We killed around 250. It's big numbers. But at the same time, we had the terrorist action today in Jerusalem. 3 people were killed, 2 women and 1 old rabbi. Again, innocent civilians. They went out of the car. They shot at the bus station in which they waited for a bus to go to Ashdod. This is the character of this organization, shooting and killing civilians. They neutralized by guy from the reserve forces who came for 12 hours from Gaza. So when he went back and he wanted to take a car to the south, he identified the event and killed the terrorists. So this is the situation. We are waiting to the schedule. The IDF is ready, in very high readiness, and it will be a need. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock, we might begin. How it will begin, it's a technical question that I think that the IDF preferred to keep it in close to the chest, how it will begin and when exactly, and where exactly.
Thank you, General. As always, you provided a wealth of information and analysis there that we'll spend the rest of the hour unpacking. Yes, let me start by asking, it seems like there is some cautious optimism here in Washington that a bigger deal for the release of a significant portion, if not all of the hostages, can be reached. Is that your sense as well, or do you think you sort of suggested that we're running out of room here for any more negotiations, any more possible deal?
I think the more that Hamas feels that the Israelis are determined to resume the operation, the better are the chances for another deal. I'm not sure that this is the feeling that they have, because many people, mainly in the media, saying that we don't believe that Israel will, and the situation is such that to begin the momentum again is a big problem. I think it's a huge mistake. Here, the determination is very clear. The sentiment in the street and within the military forces is clear. And at the end of the day, in democracies, the decision makers should take into account the sentiment of the majority of the people. And no question, the sentiment of the majority of the Israelis is that we should make the job to the end.
One of the claims that Hamas makes, at least, about why it can't release more hostages is that they're not being held by Hamas, that Palestinian Islamic Jihad or other groups are holding these hostages and Hamas doesn't have control over them. Is your sense that that's accurate, or is that just an excuse?
I don't know, but it is Hamas' problem, not ours.
Is there been any useful information that has come from speaking to the hostages that have been released?
I don't know if I would know, I would not tell you. I know for sure that the interrogation of Hamas terrorists which had been captured during the operation, and a lot of data, papers, and computers which had been confiscated by our forces in the headquarters of Hamas in the north part of Gaza provided very good intelligence. How this intelligence will be translated into operational targets, I don't know.
So I did want to spend a bit of time today talking about some of the pressure that, as you said, General Amidror, the Americans and others are putting on Israel about the operation in the north, particularly in the south. But maybe before we get more into that, if I could ask General Norkin to give us an update on some of the operational challenges that have been faced so far in the north of Gaza.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm honored to be here again. If I may, I would like to start by mentioning and to add something that General Amidror started to describe the situation in the 360 over Israel, and I might mention the Houthis, because in the Red Sea there is a quite potential huge change once the Houthis start to attack ships near Yemen. And now some of the companies decided that they might navigate around Africa. And by that, the schedule of those ships is going to be late for a month, and the price are going higher. And as you all understand, this is not an only Israeli issue. It's a regional issue, especially Egypt wants it because of the effect over the Suez Canal. So I think that in the last 2 weeks or 10 days, the situation near Yemen is changed, and we should take care and understand what is going to be there and how we are going to open again the international water. Since the pause of the operational activities, the military is preparing itself to the second or the third phase after the first air campaign and then the ground maneuver. And now we are preparing ourselves for the next phase of the war. And I think that it won't be the last one. Because to achieve what General Amidror mentioned, to let's say destroy all the military capabilities in Gaza and to be able to move back to all the villages near the border, it is going to take time. And I'm sure that it won't be only military activities. We should act also by some diplomatic steps to achieve those goals altogether, and of course to bring all the Israelis back home. At the last 10 days, the Air Force also start to, let's say, learn the lessons from the first months. And I would like to present some of the, let's say, unique video clips that we can share here in this session. So let me do it, please. You can see it now, Blaise?
Yes, thank you, General. Everyone should have it on their screen.
Okay, so first of all, what we are seeing here is a rocket launcher, a quite big one, underground rocket launcher, and it's a unique picture taken by a UAV. And by this picture, you can see the launcher after he launched something around 30 rockets near the trees, underground. And of course, there are tunnels that connect these launchers to the rockets storage. It's almost like a base, underground base. It's covered by sand or covered by other materials, and then once it opened, they launch the rockets in less than 10 seconds and then close it again. In this specific situation, you can see that this UAV got this picture, and in the next few seconds, going to attack it.
משגרים תת-קרקעיים, שתי קנות של 8, תביא לנו תוקף עכשיו.
So this is one of the main missions for the Air Force, to destroy all the rockets and the missiles of Hamas, and by this short clip you can understand the challenge. The next one is the short clip that's been taken from one of our combat airplanes. You can see through this sensor the error interception. So let's take a look. It's of course, it's a FLIR infrared sensor. You can see the hot dot in a minute near this is the missile, the ballistic missile that the Houthis launched from Yemen toward Israel, and the arrow intercept this missile. It's already happened 2 times, one in Arrow 2 and the second one Arrow 3. First operational interception of Arrow 3. And of course, once they launch those missiles, Israel is not the only state that threatened by those missiles. Also Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. And the military cooperation in those issues is quite good, of course, with the American Navy and the American Air Force. The third one is the F-35 intercept Houthi cruise missile. the Israeli Air Force is the first to use those F-35 to intercept suicide UAVs or cruise missiles. We already did it 2 years ago. And now in this war, we already intercept some of them with F-35 and F-16, and so is the Iron Dome. And as you all know, the American Navy support us from time to time and intercept some of them over the Red Sea. So those cruise missiles, as you can see here, launched from Yemen toward the city of Eilat. You can see here the cruise missiles and from the F-35. Let's see it again. By those three examples, you can understand the situation here in Israel. The Air Force is fighting in 5 fronts. Gaza is a main front, Judea and Samaria every night, as Amidror mentioned. The ground forces act in Judea and Samaria, and the Air Force support them. Lebanon, every few days in Syria, and every day over the Red Sea. And now we are preparing ourselves, and the military, the Air Force, prepare themselves for the next phase of this war.
Thank you, General Norkin. Since
If I may
please.
add to Norkin's remarks, which even myself learned from what he just said. I think we have to pay attention here. There is a new kind of agreement of networks in the Middle East. The combination of under the umbrella of CENTCOM, it's a very important cooperation between Saudi Arabia, Israel, the American forces, and in some cases Egypt as well. It's the same enemy, and the cooperation gives all the participants many advantages. And this is a good test for such an alliance that many people spoke before the war about, and here it's in action. The second remark is General Norkin is very modest, but it is the first time that the whole anti-missile system of Israel was in action. And the successful of cooperation between the Iron Dome, David Sling, Patriot, Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, in one operation when the whole system was cooperated together, and the allocation of targets and what will be done by whom is a huge test for the system, kind of a system of a system, and it works very well. Of course, we have many lessons, and I'm sure that the Air Force will make many changes after the war based on the lessons, but it is the first time that all the systems work together, and we are very satisfied from the results. It's the first time that David Sling took part in many numbers, and it was fantastic results.
Yeah, we used to call the regional cooperation air diplomacy in the past, and now we see that there are a lot of, let's say, operational fruits that we can achieve from this air diplomacy, led by the American Air Force, AFCENT, Air Force CENTCOM, and all the partners around the Middle East. They are part of this air diplomacy.
Thank you, General. So it was actually that cooperation that I wanted to comment on and ask you about. Earlier this year, my colleague John Hanna led a project looking at integrated air and missile defense in the region and what it would take to make it happen. And one of the things that
the answer is very clear. You need a war to make it work.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. Is are we seeing this in action? You know, one of the building blocks, as that report laid it out, is a common operating picture, and we seem to have some sort of cooperation, as you said, General Norkin, between the Israeli Air Force, U.S. Navy ships in the Red Sea, and if I remember correctly, there was even one Saudi interception of a Houthi-fired missile. So I was going to ask, can you tell us what sort of cooperation or coordination is happening regionally to determine who is going to shoot down which targets?
Well, I cannot unfortunately describe it in a, let's say, a professional way, because it's undercover, and we want it to be quite a quality procedure. So let's keep it like that. But it's easier for us and for our neighbors to cooperate first against the threat of the cruise missiles and the suicide UAVs. And let's call it a first stage. And I'm sure that in the future we can cooperate against rockets, ballistic missiles, because to defend each other against ballistic missiles, you need to share technology, to share some radars, sensors, interceptors, launchers. And I'm sure that this is part of our common vision. We all understand that if you want to keep the Middle East safe, if you want to keep the Middle East stable, you need to cooperate. And we use the sentence air superiority as a bridge for regional stability. So now we are doing cooperation against those UAVs, all of them made by Iran. And the Iranian UAVs, it's a common threat for all of us. And the cruise missiles, also made by Iran. So we can start with those threats, and in the future, I'm sure that we are going to build a regional air defense system.
Staying with the threats necessitating such a system, as General Norkin mentioned, we've seen increased attacks or continuing attacks from the Houthis in Yemen. Some attacks from Iran itself, it seems, on ships near the Gulf. Even though it appears that for the most part, other Iranian proxies like Hezbollah and the Iraqi militias are observing the operational pause, even though they're not part of the deal. Do you have any insights, General Amidror, as to why some groups have stopped their activities or slowed their activities, and other groups like the Houthis are still attacking? What's the operational logic there?
No, the Houthis stopped launching into Israel during the ceasefire, and I think that for them to show that it's not that they're fighting for themselves, they're fighting for the Palestinians. So when the Palestinians are ceasing the fire, they are joining the Palestinians. I mean, I think that it's important for them to show that it's not an Iranian business, it is Palestinian business, and because of that, they are calculating or putting themselves at the same level with the Palestinians when it is coming for those attacks. And we have to assume, and the Houthis said it in publicly in very clear words, that the minute that it will begin in Gaza, they will continue their operation against Israel, and even surprise Israel in this case.
And I assume you would expect the same from Hezbollah to resume its attacks.
Yeah. They didn't say, but we understand this is the policy.
But at this point, you're not expecting any further escalation from Hezbollah. Just sort
As far as we know, at the end of till the end of the beginning of the ceasefire, the decision there was not to go to levels of confrontation that might lead to a big war, but to remain in the limited area of the border, and there to do whatever they try to do in the past. Will they jump to another level in this situation? I don't know. My assessment is that it is not their interest, but it's a decision of one person. I don't know what his decision will be.
At the risk of asking a question that we might all know the answer to, I haven't heard UNIFIL mentioned at all over the course of
what?
UNIFIL.
What is UNIFIL?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Have they played any role in trying to limit the attacks or Hezbollah's presence south of the Litani?
The answer is totally no. But I want to say something about the future. Towards the end of Gaza, we will have to make a decision what we do with Hezbollah in Lebanon, because we cannot live in a situation in which there are one forces which are 5 times stronger than the Nukba forces of Hamas will be so close to Israel. Between Metula and the border is 1 meter, or Margaliot. So that's something that we should take in care to. One of the options is to go to the international community with the American supporting us and say to the United Nations and other countries, guys, there is a decision of the United Nations, 1701, according which Hezbollah cannot be in the south. Either you push Hezbollah to the north, or we will have to do it by force, and to give the international community the opportunity to make the efforts and to succeed to push Hezbollah to the north. My assessment that the chances that will happen is none. But that should be done by Israel to use the UNIFIL excuse, and when it will not be fulfilled by the Hezbollah, we will have a legitimacy to use our military forces to attack the Hezbollah. So in a way, UNIFIL might be one of the tools that be used by Israel in the future to buy the legitimacy to unilaterally attack Hezbollah.
Do you think there's anyone who actually believes UNIFIL could or would do that at this point? I mean, I think hasn't that case already been proven?
UNIFIL is not even a joke.
I wanted to ask a bit about what you mentioned, General Amidror, about some of the requests, if not pressure, that Israel is getting from the United States about how it's operating in Gaza, and ask, we've seen increasing reporting and statements here in Washington. There was a big article in the New York Times over the weekend sort of complaining about the number of civilian deaths in Gaza. Vice President Harris has said too many have died. There's reporting that in the meeting that Secretary Blinken had today in Israel, he was saying that Israel has to change the way it operates because of the civilian casualties. Are the Americans actually providing operational ideas of what Israel could do differently? What is the United States asking of Israel?
We are ready to listen and to learn. If it will be a good idea, we will adopt it. Up till now, we didn't hear anything that should change the way that we are conducting the war in Gaza.
What sort of pressure can or would the Americans bring or have threatened to bring against Israel potentially?
The truth is that I don't see any American administration which will be ready to take the responsibility for the security of Israel. And because of that, I don't see any administration that will force Israel to do something which is totally against the interests of the security of Israel. And in this case, the Americans agree that Hamas should be annihilated or dismantling. And dismantling of Hamas cannot be done without fighting Hamas. And because the way that Hamas is using civilians as a human shield, there is no way to fight Hamas without having civilians in the middle. But the reason for that, the address to change it is not Israel, it's Hamas. If Hamas surrender, or Hamas will not use civilians as human shield, civilians will not be in the battlefield. We prefer the situation without Palestinian civilians. The irony is that the Hamas interest is to maximize the number of civilians which will be hurt, and Israel's interest is to minimize this number, because that gives Hamas the ability to go to the media and to say, hey guys, they're killing civilians. By the way, all the numbers are wrong numbers. If you take the statistic on the wrong numbers, 65% of the people which have been killed are women and children. And where is Hamas? Hamas are not women and not children, probably. So if 65%, 55% of the people which have been killed are women and children, so men are not fighting. What's happening to the statistic is wrong totally. The numbers cannot be accepted. But assuming that many had been killed in the north, the address for the demand is Hamas. If they will not be there, we will not kill them, and they are the only one who stop them from moving from the area.
Is there any concern that the United States might condition further assistance for Israel, such as the supply of ammunition, on a change in operations?
This is a question that you should ask yourself. Do you think that from the moral point of view, can United States of America, which went 1,500 miles away to kill Al-Qaeda, can tell Israel don't do it 15 kilometers from the place in which they butchered, raped, and killed women, children, babies, and you can tell us don't do the same operation that we did 1,500 miles away from America for something which is 10 times less than what they did in 7th of October. So from the moral position, I don't see any administration in Israel who can give this advice to the Israelis. But it is a question that you ask in Washington, not in Jerusalem.
General Norkin, I wanted to ask you, because some of the criticism that's been made here in America has been about the weaponeering and the ammunition choices used by Israel, claiming that they're using bigger 2,000-pound bunker busters when they could be using smaller bombs. Could you give us some insights into how Israel decides which ammunition to use and why some of the bigger bombs are necessary to deal with the threats in Gaza?
Well, first of all, if we might have more accurate ammunition, like JDAM or SDB, we are going to see less collateral damage. So if someone wants us to be more accurate and everyone wants to avoid any collateral damage or loss of life of civilians, we should use more JDAM and SDBs. And the American military, the American government support Israel with a lot of JDAMs and SDB, and we appreciate the American support. And I don't think that we use heavy bombs for targets that need a small ammunition. There is no such a situation. And as you all know, that from time to time we call, in the first months, the intelligence did 30,000 phone calls to people in Gaza, and the intelligence asked them, please leave your house because in your basement there is ammunition or rocket storage or launcher or underground headquarters. So we asked the people to move from those targets before we attack them. But let's face the reality. We asked 1 million people to move to the south part of Gaza. So the situation in Gaza, it's not like the situation we all know, let's say, from other areas around the globe or even in the Middle East, like Fallujah. Once the military forces push in, the citizens can run away to the desert. There is no way to do it in Gaza. So you need to operate there while there are more than 2 million people. And this is part of your plan. This is part of the IDF plan, how to do it. And because of the citizens, the tempo of the ground maneuver is much slower, because we need to detect the targets and we don't want to attack any civilians, schools, hospitals. Let's look what happened around the Shifa hospital. The IDF acted there for 2 weeks, like a surgery, with special forces that penetrate into the hospital basement. We didn't attack the hospital by JDAM. It's very easy thing to do, but we didn't do it. So back to your question, I think that it's part of the operational plan, part of our whole challenge. There is no reason to think that we are using the wrong size of bombs for different targets. We always prefer to use the smallest bomb that can achieve the goal of the mission. But we should all remember that most of those terrorists stay underground. So you need to penetrate to 20, 30 meters underground targets. And you cannot do it with a tennis ball. You should use heavy bombs for the underground tunnels. And this is part of the story.
I think we've all seen, General Norkin, videos from past conflicts in which the Air Force has a target and then calls off a strike because of the presence of children or other civilians. Has that happened in this conflict? Is that something that the Air Force is still practicing?
It's happened, but not 100% of the attacks, because now we would like to attack more and more Hamas commanders. And if we are going to call to the Hamas regional headquarters, all the commanders will run away. So from time to time, we do these missions without phone calls, but we always, as part of the mission plan, we should know how many people are living in this specific apartment. And we keep the international law, and we keep our values, first of all, the Jewish values and the democratic values, by understanding that we are not going to attack, let's say, a simple soldier or simple terrorist with his family. If we are going to attack someone with other civilians inside the apartment, he should be a quite high-ranked terrorist. So, and this is part of the game.
You mentioned Israel relying on intelligence and understanding of sort of who lives where, how many people should be in a given building. Given the mass displacement and movement of civilians that has happened from the north to the south, is having that intelligence and that understanding of who's in a building going to be a challenge as Israel operates more in the south?
Well, I think it will be the same like it was in the north, because this is part of our method of action. Our procedures and systems are quite good, and especially in this war, the cooperation between the ground forces, the Air Force, and the intelligence community is very, very close and very good. So the Air Force can support those ground forces in a very close distances with a very precise attacks. And I can say that most of the terrorists that we already killed been killed by air activities, and most of them been asked by the ground commanders.
So I recognize, General Amidror, both the likely inaccuracy of the civilian death counts coming from Hamas, and I understand the difficulty in assessing the number of terrorists killed, given that many of them are probably buried in tunnels. But is there an Israeli assessment of how many civilians are killed, how many terrorists have been killed so far?
Well, please.
As far as I know, there is no clear assessment of the civilians which have been killed. We know that there is a huge exaggeration in numbers in the publications of Hamas and all the publications which are coming out of Hamas. There is no any objective, but I'll give you one number. When the Islamic Jihad rockets failed on the Ali hospital in Gaza, an hour later, they announced that there are 500 people which have been killed there. We were lucky enough to have some Europeans with sources into the hospital, and they told us that the number is around 50, somewhere between 50 and 100. I mean, 5 times more than the real number, at least 5 times more than it. And if you take the numbers coming from Gaza, this is the level for exaggeration, 5 times more.
I think we all remember in the last war in 2021, the New York Times published a big story about the dead children of Gaza with lots of pictures on the front page, only for it to turn out that many of those were actually Hamas fighters or weren't dead at all. And so I think we're aware of the problems that comes with international reporting. In your assessment, General Amidror, if we do return to operations in the near future, sort of how much longer is there for the northern phase, and how long until operations progress to the south?
I think that the pause will be with us for another 2 days, and then the operation will be resumed. We will see forces dedicated to the south and not only to the north. I don't know what will be the exact schedule of each effort. As I said, we learned many lessons in the first part, and the days were used by the IDF to learn the lessons and to improve the tactics in the future. We have better information or more information from the interrogations that we did, and probably more targets. So I think that we will, the end of the week or the beginning of the next week, it will be resumed. The system will be looked not far from what we saw in the first stage, but with many lessons which had been learned by us, and another effort in the south. Remember that we designated the Muasi area, which is west of Khan Yunis, as the safe haven for the citizens. This area will not be target for the ground forces or the air force, and we might call all the citizens living in the area which the operation will take part in, the Khan Yunis, Deir el-Balach, and maybe in Rafah, to evacuate themselves to the designated area near the Muasi, or around the Muasi, because this is the place in which they have the safe haven. They have the humanitarian help of the United Nations and other organizations. And this is the best way to minimize the number of civilians being caught in the battlefield.
Have there been, or are there any civilians currently in the Muasi area? Have people evacuated to there, or is that something that Israel will encourage once the southern operation begins?
No. There are at least almost 1 million people in the Muasi now. The United Nations provide them with tents, and a lot of the humanitarian aid is going there. Part of it was confiscated by Hamas for their purposes, but we knew that will happen. He did it in the past, and he probably will do it in the future. But this is the area to which we recommended the Palestinians to move.
All right. Thank you, General Amidror. Let me invite you both for any closing thoughts or remarks that you want to leave us with. General Norkin, I'll turn to you first.
Well, as you know, this is the first time that we are engaging with such a challenge, with such a war. Once we are looking at the past, we never faced such a challenge. And having said that, once the government declared that the goal is to bring home all the Israelis, and of course the foreign citizens that Hamas took, and then to destroy any military capability in Gaza. So to achieve both of them inside such a territory with 2 million citizens, it will take time. There is no way to do it in 2 weeks. And at the end, there is no, let's say, picture like crossing the Suez Canal or climbing the Golan Heights. The winning picture will be once the citizens will be again at their homes, and everything will be with flowers. It will take years. So we are going to have a quite long campaign. We need to do it step by step to avoid any big mistakes or a lot of collateral damage. and we cannot stop. We should move forward, and we should have patience to achieve the very important goals that we already declared.
Thank you, General Norkin. General Amidror, any final thoughts?
I joined General Norkin in his summing up the purpose of the war.
Right. Well, thank you both, General Amidror, General Norkin. Thank you for joining us so late in the evening, especially for you. Let me thank our audience for tuning in. Invite you, as always, to find the latest JINSA analysis and updates at jinsa.org, and wish all of you a good afternoon and a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.